It speaks to my drive, what motivates me, how motivated I am to do things. A lot of my friends and classmates that didn't grow up in poverty haven't made it to the level I have as far as, their career. I think probably, well, I'm certain that a lot of those things that I learned to cope with the extreme poverty that I grew up in later on in life turned out to benefit me in a big way.
What inspires a father, a Christian, and a college admissions director to take his firsthand, up close experiences with poverty and turn that into a mission for change? Let's get into the episode and find out. Welcome to Me and Poverty, a podcast about breaking barriers, building bridges, and changing lives one story at a time. Today's guest is none other than my personal friend, John Barker, or as I like to call him, John Barkley. A little bit about my pal John Barkley. He grew up in eastern Kentucky, Floyd County specifically. He suffered with similar poverty that I did. And that's actually one of the things that really brought us together as friends. And we've traveled together. We've recruited for college together. And I'm honored to have him on as a guest. A little bit more about him professionally. And I'll be honest, guys, I almost forgot that he's actually a very talented musician. He's going to downplay it, I'm sure, today. But he's a very talented musician. Loves basketball just like I do. You'll see later whenever he comes on, he's got a pretty cool poster behind him. He might move his head and let us see it. I don't know. But we've played a lot of pickup. He's an admissions director at a college in Louisa, Kentucky. That's right, Louisa. And it's growing. It's seen a lot of success here the last couple of years, and they're adding new programs. So super excited for him to talk about that today. Mr. Barkley, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely, my friend. What is your relationship with poverty?
I grew up, as you said, in eastern Kentucky. I grew up in a single parent home. My father left when I was really young, about age 2. My mother had me when she was 17. So just by default, grew up really poor. I didn't have everything I needed always. All the things that come with that, the worries and the stressors, really affects your confidence growing up and how you form relationships and develop, to be honest with you. Physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, it impacts all those things.
Yeah, I talk a lot about the different types of deserts that we see in Appalachia. I mean, shoot, when I was getting my undergrad degree, I wrote my senior seminar paper on food deserts. Well, food deserts aren't the only thing that we struggle with when we're born into poverty in Appalachia, right? And I would never try to degrade a family or anything like that. So for anybody watching this, it's not about that. I was born into the same type of poverty as John, and we know about those deserts of opportunities. So whether it be access to quality food, whether it be the spiritual side of things, of course, the big one is financial, right? That everybody talks about. But those are just on the surface. It goes so much deeper. John, before we dive deep into poverty, could you tell our audience how you became a musician?
Growing up, I didn't get to do a lot of extracurricular activities. One of the things that was always around kind of the house, because my uncles and my grandpa, was a guitar. That is something that I could do, and they could teach me things here and there. I started playing when I was about 12. I just slowly got, a little bit better. Now I get to do that in my church and at different venues. I get to pay that forward to my son. He's a talented musician and he's getting better. So it's something that I'm very proud of.
Would you say being a musician has been a big outlet for you?
Absolutely. It has been an outlet for me, and it gave me somewhere I could dream. When you grow up in those type of circumstances, in those type of situations, you don't have a lot of hope. It did give me something that I could hope in. It gave me something that I could, a place where I could stand out, for the right reasons.
That's right. That's right. And probably help build your confidence, I would imagine.
It did. It did. As you mentioned, I don't know that I'm sitting here today in the position that I'm in, Joe, if not for music and basketball.
I can definitely attest to that. And I've seen you play. I've seen the role, the supportive role, even in helping others put themselves out there, right?
Sure.
And it's been a huge blessing to me, and I know it's been a blessing to countless others. Even sitting at the cafe, the local cafe we have in Louisa, guys, on the weekends and watching you play it's been awesome, and I know you're making a difference even with that. And we haven't even gotten into your day job. I appreciate you sharing that. Be honest. Be honest. Did you watch a lot of NBA growing up, my friend?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I was.
Why don't you give the audience a little glimpse of what you got behind your head there? You want to just like give them one of these? Oh, that's right. When you're growing up, struggling with poverty like we did, you got a lot of kids that are, and when I'm thinking of our ages, you got a lot of kids that are just thinking about, dunking like Michael Jordan or maybe passing like Larry Bird. But what about you?
Some of the kids at my school, their dream was to be like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and those type people. And a lot of times, I think my dream was just to be like them,
Oh,
and
wow.
and
Yeah.
that kind of set the tone of developed all kinds of things in my character that I've had to work on later on in life, rid myself of, for lack of a better word, because not feeling good enough, not feeling important, not feeling valued, all those things, living in, and I'll just be honest with you, Joe, there's a lot of secrecy. I can remember not having rides home from ball practice and getting my friends' parents to drop me off at a different place that wasn't my house.
Right. Right.
So, and so you got to think of what's going on in a 12-year-old's mind at that time. You're juggling all these things, and then you're ashamed to be dropped off where you live, and it's impactful.
You just took me back, my friend. You took me back. So growing up, we bounced around a little bit, and I think I can say this now, and I don't think we'll get in trouble for it, my brothers and I. But growing up, I was so young, I couldn't get in trouble for it. But we grew up in eastern Kentucky, and we had a few mobile homes. Apparently, again, I'm so young, I'm in diapers still. My brothers apparently accidentally set fire to a few houses that we were living in. And so you're looking at a single wide mobile home, right? And so they would accidentally create a fire in the house, maybe trying to cook something or smoking something that they shouldn't have been, and they would quickly toss it under the bed, thinking that would put it out. They'd get rid of it, right? No,
Yeah.
no. A bed would catch fire. A single wide would catch fire. And so we moved around quite a bit. But even when I was dating as a teenager, I was a little ashamed, right? And again, God bless my grandparents, right? They saved us. They took us in when no one else did, and kept us all together. But there were plenty. I mean, I would even, if things got a little serious, we're talking like ninth grade or so. If things would get serious with a girl and she wanted to come visit my family or hang out at my house as a 16-year-old later, I would literally break that relationship off.
Yeah.
I'd have to keep her at bay.
Yes.
I couldn't even look her in the face and give her a good reason of why, because I wanted to date her, right? Like, but I get that, man. There were a couple of times, and they're teachers that I want to have on this show one day. I'd have a couple of teachers after an academic event, so I'd have to stay after school for that. But my grandparents wouldn't come pick me up, so I'd always have to find a ride home too, right? You took me back when you're talking about a friend having to take you home. So I had a couple of times a teacher would take me home, and I'd be just so ashamed that they'd have to see where I lived because I'd put on this face, right?
Yes.
Biblically speaking, I would put on the veil. I'd go to school. I'd pretend everything was okay.
Yeah. And I see you now. I can even see you doing the same things that we had to do in our youth now. You're juggling the fact that I am grateful for the people that loved me and the people that stood by me and the people that invested in me. But that doesn't change the fact that, we were in dire straits as far as poverty.
That's right.
And
Like that's just the reality, right?
yes, so I too find myself a lot juggling when I tell my story. I don't want to come across as that like I didn't have people in my life that loved me. I had grandparents that loved me, and my mother loved me
Yeah.
dearly. I think they grew up in a time where the things that started to matter at my age didn't matter as much or weren't as apparent.
So that's been the juggle. You call it a juggle. That's a perfect way to describe it, right? Because you want to share your story, your testimony. You want to be brutally honest because you know that'll cut through the noise. You know that speaks to people.
Yes.
But you're also you love your people. You love your family. You try to honor them. That's the juggle I've had as I've got my book coming out soon. I'm like, do I change X person's name? Do I not tell this? How far do I go? How truthful can I be?
Yes.
Because I am a proud Appalachian. I love this place, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life investing in it and trying to make a difference. So I don't want to harm that, but I'm also trying to be honest, right? It's tough. It's a tough balance to strike.
It's very tough, and I'm excited for your book also. Me and Poverty. That's awesome. And the Kickstarter ended last week.
Yep, sure did, and it was successful. And I've got a couple weeks before I get the funding. Once I do, I'll be able to pay my editor, and a few weeks, couple months, and we'll be finished with editing. And super excited for that. I appreciate you sharing your excitement as well, my friend.
Yeah, I was like blown away. Joe says I got a book. I got a book coming out possibly, and I was
Yeah.
like, all right, man. Tell me how I can help.
Yeah, you were one
Because
of
this
the
is
first
something
people. So.
this is something that we're both very passionate about. I mean, like you say, on our road trips and things that we've been on together, we immediately connected on this. And I don't want to call it trauma bonding, but in a way that's kind of what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's comfort found in that, right? There's comfort
Sure,
in community.
sure. And you can tell like when somebody just with a few sentences that
Yeah.
me too, that
That's right.
he knows what this looks like,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
knows what this feels like. And
Yeah.
so
And that is one of the main things I'm grateful for in our relationship, right? As brothers, and we do share that trauma, if you will, but we're also, I mean, I wrote down before we got in the lobby together before we started recording. I was just writing down a few thoughts, and I thought to myself, God, I am so blessed to have so many friends that are also overcomers. Like, think about that. And it's not a pity party for us, right?
no,
It's, oh yeah, look where God has brought me from. Like, how cool is that? Speaking of that, what role would you say your faith plays in your testimony, in your past, even today? What would you say to that, John?
so I grew up in a really strict religious household, which also kind of confused me,
Sure.
and I'm not really going to delve into that much, but what I would like to say is that those roots that were planted in me at a young age, the things that I was taught about the Bible, and I can remember my mom reading a children's Bible to me every night before bed. I'd also like to say I remember her buying that Bible from a door-to-door Bible salesman and thinking, man, this book is huge. It's got all these crazy cool pictures in it.
Wow.
And it was expensive this
Yeah.
book must be important because we couldn't afford it. She read that book to my sister and I every night, and she just passed a few months back. And I tell you, I've been revisiting a lot of that.
Yeah.
So even when I didn't understand how much of a role my faith and those type things were playing, they were showing up huge in my life, even when I didn't know it. But now that I have my own son,
Yeah.
and that I work for a Christian college and all these things, it's helped me to grow and to understand how to apply those things and how to value those things more.
Right.
So I would say it's hugely important.
As we just simply mature, right? And especially spiritual maturity, it helps you gain clarity and it helps you focus on the things that are really important. So I know I sit here and I think all of the petty things that confused me or that caused confrontation growing up when you're talking about religion and all of that. I look at my son now and I'm like, I don't even want to remotely try to conflict or confuse him. My prayer for him is that he'll just have a relationship with Christ. That's it. I don't want him, I don't care if he's this certain denomination. I don't care what church, I just want him to have that relationship. That's the big things that matter.
I know your son is a little bit younger than my son, and that's one of the things that I have struggled with as he's gotten older. He'll be 15 this month.
Well, and he's
So
probably got questions, right?
sure. Oh, yeah. Questions I can't answer, and he's always coming up with scenarios
Yeah.
to try to debunk. Because
Sure. Sure.
Dad's
It's
way couldn't
That's
be the
natural.
best way.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So
I don't look forward to that, my friend. I know it's coming. I know it's coming.
it definitely is, and but at the same time, we're best friends,
Yeah.
and I get it, and I get it. And one of the things that I have learned in the last 5 years to be true in my life is that I let God do the fixing. You
Mm.
know, let God do fix because I can be a control freak.
Yeah.
I could try to fix, manage, and control everything.
Yeah.
And really, we do what we can, and then we let God do His job. And if I'm trying to fix, manage, and control too much, then it takes a lot of my faith out of the equation.
That's good, man. I'm going to keep that in mind. We've talked a little bit about basketball, right?
Sure.
I know I wasn't able to play organized sports. That was the dream of mine. I played 1 year in middle school. But what I did do with basketball is we had a little dirt court, and I think you and I have talked about this. I had a little dirt court, and this is actually a section in my book too. 1 year, my 5 brothers and we got a basketball goal for Christmas. And man, I think I signed my NBA contract that day. So
That's right.
we had a little dirt court. It had gravel on it, and obviously, I don't know if you tried dribbling the basketball on gravel, it doesn't work too well. So we had to clear out all the gravel with shovels and rakes. So we did that. Now, I was outside playing basketball on that court in rain, snow, sleet, hail. It was dark, and there's a reason for that. It was my outlet. That's when I had the most one-on-one time with God. That's when he was stirring in me. That's when I had no one. I had basketball and I had God just pouring into me in that time. Would you say you have any experiences like that as a youth that really begin to shape your experiences, that shaped who you are today?
Yeah, I did something similar. I lived about 2 miles from our town park, and I would walk that there and back every day and play ball most of the day. Those were a lot of the times that I got to escape my situation, be somebody else, just be one of the guys
Be
that,
quote unquote normal, right?
yes, not worry about the problems of what we may eat, those type problems, and just be a kid and be myself, So definitely, there was a lot of those times when I would use sports as an outlet.
So I coached basketball in elementary school for a couple of years during, and COVID kind of knocked that out. But I look forward to getting back to it one day. People couldn't really understand why I wanted to coach youth so much. I didn't have a, typically you do it because you have a kid that's the same age, or that's how you get into it. But God called me to serve youth early, and that's a quick way I found to do it. I talk about this quite a bit. Even just the sound of a basketball just would bring me so much peace. I know that's weird. It probably sounds a little weird, but I'm thinking the amount of yelling, primarily in our house, there was a lot of verbal abuse and some physical, less for me, more for my older brothers. A lot of conflict there, but we had a lot of yelling. And I struggle with people that yell today, honestly. But I would just, I'd run outside when the yelling began, and just even the sound of a basketball on my way to our little dirt court on the other end of the property, it would just soothe me. So I got into coaching because I was like, I can't be the only one. There's no way. There's no way. I can't be the only 10-year-old that suffers at home. So I want this to be an outlet for them. I want this to bring them peace. And I got to see that quite a bit.
Sure, sure. I think it's fantastic that you're doing that, and not only do you help kids in that way, but you can also help to coach them as to how to treat others that may be less fortunate than them. Because sometimes at the early age, especially 10, 11, 12, those type ages, kids can be really mean and not even know they're doing it.
Yeah.
They can say things that are really hurtful and impactful, things that last a lifetime, and not even realize that, hey, you know, this may not be that impactful to you, but for people that struggle with this on this kind of level, it really can be. And I think one of the things, as you were saying that, Joe, about bouncing a basketball, and I saw you play, so you got some game, Joe. So
Yeah, I appreciate that coming from Mr. Barkley himself here.
and I one of the things that was always true for me is if I'm bouncing the basketball when I'm by myself, then I'm not going to get picked last. This is a place where I'm not last. This is a place where I usually get picked early. I usually, be the first 3 or 4 picks, 5 picks,
Yeah.
and I'm not last. I'm not at the bottom of this anyway. And I found out I can control that when I'm in those moments that I'm by myself and practicing.
I remember so I've been reading a book and we talked about it. It's called Read. And I think the subtitle is How God's People Can Bring Justice Through Literacy. Well, part of that, they talk about the pride that comes with being able to read early and often. But it also talks about the other side of it, right? The other side of the coin. Well, and there's also a documentary that I've mentioned to you called Sentenced. And of course, Stephen Curry is the one that does the voiceover. In that, you can see the frustration. You can see the embarrassment that comes to somebody when they aren't able to read well. So there was a lot of pride that came when I would be picked. So when we were playing with others, and that's why basketball was also an outlet in a group setting for me as well, right? In PE class or whatever. I would have a sense of pride. And that's why God stirred in me recently this idea of, I wasn't the best student in the world, but thankfully I was able to read early. But I know there's a lot of kids that aren't. And I know I can see, and I see it in my own family, the discouragement of not being able to read early and the effects of that, right? You may not even graduate high school. And then, like you being in higher ed now, the effects of that long term, obviously, lower wages, socioeconomic status, you're stuck. So, yes, not being picked last, that's huge. And there was a spiritual side of that too, I think. So, again, when God's talking to me when I was playing basketball by myself, I was his pick. Man, that's a message like waiting to happen, John.
Yes, I like it.
Yeah. Let's dig a little deeper. Going into poverty, what were some specific, and you alluded to a couple of them already, but what would you say are some of the specific day-to-day challenges that you know? Because again, I'm just here to represent our audience, right? People that are investing in youth. We want to give them kind of a true picture of what those kids might be facing. What would you say are some of the day-to-day challenges, just everyday stuff, that kids growing up in poverty face?
Education wasn't something that was valued at home. It was understood that the way that you make it is that you go in the coal mines, or you do something like that. Reading, those type things, wasn't something that was valued. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges, is that sometimes the kids at the poverty level come from parents that aren't educated. And if you're not educated, sometimes that can lend to not valuing education.
I was blessed. Man, we had such a weird dynamic with education growing up. So I look at my eldest brother. He was in special education classes, and he did okay though. He did well in school. My next brother down from him, he struggled a lot, and for different reasons. I mean, my goodness, my two older brothers, they were older, obviously, when our parents abandoned us. They probably, John, they probably saw things that I could only have nightmares about, you know? And so I don't sit here and pretend like I fully understand what they went through. I was so young, right? So it's hard to say what they faced at home and how that played into school early, like really early. In that book, it talks about, and again, the book's called Read. It talks about if you don't learn to read at all or on your level by fourth grade, you never will. Because the way, and this is all respect to education, the way it's structured, I mean, and to an extent, rightfully so, you learn to read like first grade through third grade, fourth grade. And then after that, you move up and you start thinking about bigger concepts. But there's quite a few kids that don't get to the right level by fourth grade. So then they just struggle the rest of their lives. My grandparents, it was so weird, John, and my wife and I were just talking about this week. My grandparents would get mad at me. I would suffer consequences if I came home with bad grades. Okay? But we didn't have a lot of positive reinforcement for doing well. So it was kind of a weird double-edged sword. It's like you better do well, and if you don't, there's consequences. But as a kid, that we understand the positive reinforcement element. It was just strange, man. And I try to kind of do a little better with my son, right? I'm sure it's the same way with you.
Yes. So since you said that, it took me back. So I was in the second grade. I was in a special reading class, is what they called it at the time, and what it meant was I was reading at a low level.
Sure.
For my age group. They used to bring these optometrists into our classrooms and check our eyes and things like that. I can remember, they checked my vision and determined that I couldn't read well because I needed glasses. When it was time to get the frames for the glasses, my family couldn't afford anything that would be to me suitable to wear. So my lenses ended up in a pair of frames that I just would not wear. I mean, I would not wear the glasses.
Yeah.
I got in trouble every day at school because my teacher's the one that kind of set into motion the fact that I did get glasses because she could tell that I was reading at a low level. But there again comes poverty into the picture. My family couldn't afford the frames, that the other kids had. I remember my frames were a big, thick. Now this Joe was in the early '80s, so
We talking like Steve
so I mean,
Urkel or
this is yeah. They were big, thick, brown frames, and I put them on, and I was like, no,
no way, dude.
no,
Yeah.
no. And so I didn't, and I didn't wear them. And you can see I have glasses now, but for years I wouldn't even think about trying a pair of glasses because of the fact that I was poor.
And I wrote it down earlier when you said it. You had a lot of kids, we did, growing up wanting to be that professional ball player. They could dream of that. Well, while you and I really just dreamt of being a normal kid that could have those dreams. My grandparents raised me. We're on a fixed income my whole life. There was always a section of glasses that our insurance would cover, right?
Yes.
And for the most part, they're ugly as sin, right?
Amen.
So of course you don't want to wear those, right? Because then you're not going to be like those kids that you're just wanting to. And man, I'm drawing an arrow around that right now. You just want to be quote unquote normal. And there is an embarrassment. There is a shame of growing up in poverty that I don't think is talked about enough. Not only that, right? Like I don't know if you all had family resource centers in your school systems. I don't know when that came about, but they played a big role in my life, and I'm always going to be grateful for them. They did a fair job of not embarrassing me, like walking along in my poverty with me long term and helping me, investing in me, and doing their best not to embarrass me. And because there's such a shame to that, man.
Yes. So we didn't have family resource centers at the time in school, but there was a center in our town. Christian Appalachian Project had a youth center where I
Yeah.
could go play pool and I could go play video games, things I couldn't afford. And I remember every day they would have snacks like for us. They would put out snacks and Kool-Aid and things like that. I would go there every day.
Yeah.
That made up for a lot of the things that I couldn't afford. Those top programs, and I'm really grateful for those top programs also, Joe.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Could you go into detail for our audience today a little bit about your role? I've kind of skipped over that, buddy. My bad. What is your role now, and what are you doing at the college? And maybe lean into kind of who you're serving at the college.
I'm the director of admissions, and I'm also over recruiting. So those two things go hand in hand in a lot of areas, and those are a lot of the trips that Joe had gone on with me, and he was helping me recruit. Those were definitely good times, but primarily at this time, we're a new college. We serve the population that is struggling with substance use disorder, meaning people that have a diagnosis of substance use disorder. Many times they will be in treatment. We will serve them while they're in the treatment centers, meaning give them an opportunity to go to college, order their transcripts, help them get their IDs, all the things that you would need to become a college student. And we have a very comprehensive, in-depth tutoring system that's available to them. For instance, if they're in the treatment center, they know where they're going to sleep, they know where they're going to eat, they have the safety taken care of. So our basic needs that we learned, in Psychology 101, Maslow, the hierarchy of need, those basic things are all taken care of. A lot of times these are students that do have history of dropping out of school or criminal history. They are learning a new way to live, so it's a very rewarding job.
Yeah, very needed. When you're talking about being God's hands and feet, and when you and I are talking about how important education is, serving vulnerable populations, and by that I mean just people struggling with poverty, right? There's different types of poverty, And I think substance abuse is oftentimes an effect of someone's poverty, whether, different types, again, different types of poverty, not just financial. So I appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate the impact you're making. I've seen it up close and personal, and it definitely encourages me to keep pushing on, keep going on. Was there ever a moment, maybe like a core memory of what we've been talking about, where someone showed you empathy, someone thought that you had potential, shared that with you? I have a chapter in my book called Be the Someone. And what that's referencing to is you see a kid that has potential and you're like, man, if only someone would invest in them. Did you ever have that someone that really sticks out to you? And you don't have to say names, but have you had a moment like that said, okay, I know this lifestyle poverty is not for me. And you've had that moment of clarity because someone invested in you or showed you love and compassion. Do you have any moments like that?
Absolutely. I was reflecting on this last week, actually. As limited as I was in so many areas, God really gave me talents
Hmm.
and things to help me overcome a lot of that. And He also put people in my life along the way to help make up for the fact that my dad left when I was 2, and I really didn't have a positive male role model in my life. At the time, I'm sure for these people, it felt like they were fighting a losing battle because for the small amount of time I was with them, it didn't seem like they were having that much of an impact. I think you're dead on with the fact that things like substance use disorder, drug abuse, alcoholism are symptoms of
Sure.
poverty. Take the poverty and all the things that are symptoms of that, lack of confidence, self-esteem, substance use issues, all these things started to rear their ugly head. But even as those things were going on in my life, and at times I felt like a volcano, um, you know, and even then God has put strong male figures to walk beside me throughout my journey. College directors, college presidents, pastors, uncles, people that I look back now and I think that person was placed there by God.
I've had those moments. I've had quite a few of those moments, and it doesn't surprise me that those are core memories for you. I know they are for me. What advice? I often ask this in these episodes. What advice would you have because of your personal experiences? What advice would you have for those that are working daily to invest in at-risk youth?
I would say in the beginning stages of the relationship with the at-risk youth or the student or the child that they're trying to help, do that in a private setting. Do that in a setting that you can earn their trust, and they can begin to understand that you're not there to embarrass them or to call them out or to tell their friends anything
Because there is
negative.
a fear,
Oh,
right?
there's a great fear, especially when you're dealing with people maybe in the school system. If I tell them this, then who are they going to tell? I would say, and because if you ask somebody, hey, does anybody in here need help? And you're in a group, there's a group of people, I don't care how much help I need. I'm not raising my hand,
That's right. That's right.
So I would say try to build a personal relationship with those students in the beginning.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I'm actually going to keep that in mind as I'm again trying my. We got a lot going on right now, but trying to build out a reading mentor program. Right, that's huge advice that I'm going to keep in mind.
Well, I think that when you're dealing with kids that have been affected by poverty, and it doesn't always encompass abuse, but many times there's abuse and other things like that, that there are significant trust issues that lend the child to be very reserved, very protected as far as sharing those top things with you, discussing their need. They're always afraid that they're going to get their parents in trouble. If I say this, then is there going to be somebody coming to my house,
Oh
trying
yeah,
to take me from my parents? So building that trust is imperative.
that is awesome, and I think a lot of people needed to hear that. So we've talked kind of a lot of heavy topics so far. I have a few things in life, memories of being raised in poverty that I find just humorous now that maybe not a lot of other people would find funny, but would you have any of those? Would you have like a funny story of growing up in poverty, something a little more lighthearted?
Absolutely. I have a story that I was thinking about the other day. Actually, so my uncle, he drank a lot, and
Sure.
he lived right beside of us, and I already was ashamed of where I lived, and we
Yeah.
lived right beside the highway. So he built a building that he would end up living in for years and years, and it was a huge building that
Oh wow.
stretched, all the way down the street, and we lived up beside a 2-lane highway, and the people that does the road construction
Oh goodness.
left yellow paint one day. The paint they paint the yellow line with,
Yep.
and he thought it would be a good idea to paint his building that color.
No way.
So not only was I ashamed of where I lived, but he built this big building and painted it road paint yellow,
Oh my
and it
gosh.
just kind of glowed. They day and night it glowed. So
That's hilarious, buddy. Oh my gosh. Okay, that one tops mine. As we look back of how far God's brought us, I remember. So you and I, we've played some pool together too, right? Well, my obsession with pool started because when I was about 12, we bought a my grandparents signed up for a 30-year mortgage at the age of like 65, and we got a new double wide, and man, we were big timers, okay, with that double wide. And so we still had our old single wide trailer from probably the 80s or something, maybe older than that. So what do we do with it? We put it on the side of our property. We gut it, so there's no walls in it, there's no flooring in it. I mean, there's just studs because there's so much water damage in the place. We throw some plywood down as flooring, and what do? We got a couple of extra walls in the thing so we can make room for pool sticks as we're shooting pool. And we throw a whatever the biggest size pool table in the world is. We put that smack dab in the middle, and we would have to open up the windows to put our pool stick out so we could, get our backswing. You got to have a good like backswing as you're playing pool. So that was always the joke was, hey, don't break the window. Make sure you slide the thing open first, okay? It was funny then. Looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, man, we were something. That's for sure. When did you find out that education was going to be part of your key to success, your way out of poverty? And then also, what made you want to make a career of education?
So it was pretty late in life that I found out the value of education. Probably in my mid 30s, I found out how valuable education could be for me. Up until then, I think I just I kind of ran off of talent and charisma,
Yeah.
those type of things that God had blessed me with, and I think I developed, for lack of a better word, to help me with the extreme poverty that I was in. I chose education, and I still continue to choose to work in higher ed because it was always something in my mind that I couldn't do. It was always a place that I didn't belong.
Well, it was too far of a goal, right?
Sure, sure.
It's not possible for you.
No,
I felt that way. Yeah.
no. It's not somewhere that you belong, and And even now, Joe, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm just now overcoming some of the things that impacted me
Yeah,
from growing up in poverty, like going in these big meetings with presidents and things, and not feeling like you belong there.
sure.
You know, those type
Fish out of
things.
water.
Sure,
Yeah.
those type things. I can remember when those type things were happening to me. It would take me back to walking in my third grade classroom and not feeling like I belong there. Regardless of how much we're impacted by things like that, I think it does, and it is beneficial for us to face those fears and try to overcome those things. And sitting here today, that is something that I've managed to overcome in a big way.
I can totally agree with you. And I'll have moments where I slip or stumble in those rooms. And I can see confused looks on people's faces. And I'm like, they'll never know or probably understand. Not everybody, right? Some people have a testimony of overcoming that sort of thing. But not many people struggle from the same poverty that you and I have, to the point that they'll never know I stumbled or slipped or messed up because, oh, I was haunted by an old memory of not feeling like I belong. And, or I forgot to shake a hand because of that, or I avoid eye contact because of this. And they're not thinking about that, you know? And that's why I think it's important that we continue to talk about there is comfort in community. And the whole big emphasis on this podcast, and I try to begin and end every episode talking about sharing stories, because there is just peace found in that you're not alone. You've escaped the poverty that you grew up in. You're now an admin at a college. What keeps you going day to day, John?
I think my faith in God, the work that I get to do each day, it's very meaningful work, and it's easy to be inspired because not only are we helping educate people, but it is in the heart of Appalachia. It is the people that struggled with the same things that I struggled with growing up, poverty,
Yeah.
addiction, substance use, all those things. So that helps to keep me motivated, and it helps to keep me grounded at the same time.
I loved working in higher education so much because the majority of the people that I was serving were the me's. They were first generation. A lot of them were being raised by their grandparents, for better or for worse, right? Being around the people. And for me, I was at a fairly young age, right? Like I was a financial aid director at, like, I think 23 years old. It was like just a couple of years ago, I was that kid. And I see that a lot with you and your scenario, right? And I think it allows you to peel back someone's onion a little faster, because you can say, hey, I was you not that long ago. And I think that plays a huge part. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, definitely. Listen, so one of the things that I hadn't mentioned is that some of the symptoms of poverty had contributed to me dropping out of school when I was 15 years old. So I dropped out of high school, and I had to go back and get my GED. Since then, I've graduated college 3 times, and now have a master's degree. But that journey wasn't an easy journey, and it wasn't a 6-year journey to a master's degree for me. It happened in several stages. I feel like I'm in a position, as far as my experience and the experience I've had living in Eastern Kentucky, growing up in poverty, knowing what it's like not to have an education, changing my mindset and beginning to value that allows me to advise my students on how to change that poverty mindset and how to change that mindset that's going to keep you in these cycles and
Hmm.
how to get out of that.
That's awesome. We need more people like you, John. I talk a lot about being vulnerable. I know your seeds of vulnerability. I've seen what they reap. I see the effects of those. I see what is grown out of those seeds. And we just need more people doing it. Buddy, you know I'm a huge fan of an underdog. And I'd like to self-proclaim I view myself as an underdog. Knowing your testimony, I would say you're probably an underdog. Do you like an underdog? Any sports teams right now, maybe in the NBA, that you see being an underdog right now that might just be an upset to someone?
Well, yeah, I love a good underdog story, Joe. And I think, listen, I know that nobody's probably going to like this, but I think the Lakers were underdogs coming into the year, and now they have
Sure.
Luka, and they've got a shot at winning a championship. So,
They do, and I've been cautious to say those words. Like I've been saying it like way back here in the back of my head, but man, I think they've just went on an 8-game win streak, and I don't see them slowing down, buddy. That chemistry and LeBron being, you say what you want about the guy. Like, I'm not a big diehard LeBron fan, nothing like that. But you see, he is a pass first kind of guy. He could pull a rocking chair out on that ball court and just simply pass to Luka, the 26-year-old, just turned 26, every now and then, get 20 assists a game, and they would win a championship. So I would agree. And you're right, it's probably not popular opinion.
well, no, of course it's not. What do you mean the Lakers are
That's right.
underdogs? You know, a lot of people give LeBron a hard time, but one of the things that I really respect about LeBron is how he parents his
Yeah,
sons.
yeah,
The fact that I've never seen him in any negative headline, nightclubs, casinos. You'll never see him in those top headlines.
right.
You'll never see him in the cheated on his wife type
Yeah,
type stuff. Now he's not going to be the stand up for Christianity type like Steph Curry is, but
sure.
you're not going to see him in those messy situations, and
Yeah,
I've always appreciated that about him.
I definitely appreciate that too, and I've got a lot of respect for him. I mean, talk about humble beginnings, talk about escaping poverty. I mean, I'm not just going to straight up put this out there. I'm not making the prediction, but how cool would it be to have LeBron talk about poverty on this podcast one day?
That would be awesome. I'm sure he could.
Yeah,
I bet he could.
I saw a video. It was is this year 22 for LeBron? I think.
I
So
think so.
they were talking about how, or I'm sorry, it was a side by side video comparison of his mom attending a game, giving him a hug and just a kiss on the cheek 22 years ago, and her doing it like last week or something. Like
Yeah.
the rock and foundation that he's had in her. And I'd love to have the world hear more about that. So who knows? Who knows? Here's the hoping that we get LeBron on. If I do, you're my guest host. That day,
Sure,
buddy. How
sure.
about that?
I would love to be on with LeBron or Steph. Of course,
That's right.
I don't think Steph, had much of a poverty story because I think his dad was in the NBA.
That's right. That's right. But him and his wife are doing phenomenal work trying to help people in North Carolina overcome poverty. So yeah. Oh yeah. This is an open call. Open call. Any other NBA players want to come and talk about poverty? Let's do it. Pretend that someone does show a teenager, a late teen, this video. What advice would you speak into them?
For anyone out there that's struggling with poverty, especially in early childhood, to surround yourself with the right type of people, to always value education, and that it's not your fault, and it's okay not to be okay. It's okay that you have less than other people. I would also like to add that some of the challenges that I faced in poverty has helped me develop into the person that I am today. It speaks to my drive, what motivates me, how motivated I am to do things. A lot of my friends and classmates that didn't grow up in poverty haven't made it to the level I have as far as, their career. I think probably, well, I'm certain that a lot of those things that I learned to cope with the extreme poverty that I grew up in later on in life turned out to benefit me in a big way.
Thank you so much for that advice. Thank you for being on the show today. We love you. We're going to continue to be praying for the impact that you're making. I know the work that you're doing is so needed. And I hope your boy's doing well. I haven't seen him in a little bit, but hope he's doing well. And I'll be praying for those tough questions that you get. I know they're headed my way soon. So if you want to just, reciprocate that'd be much appreciated, my friend. If today's audience found this video meaningful and you found value in it, please share this video, like it, comment, subscribe to the channel. We don't want you to miss out on future episodes. And remember, keep telling stories.